Hi, Natalie. Haven't seen you in a little minute either.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, there's Nat.
Hey,
And
everyone.
Anna. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Joyce. Great to see you.
Back at you, boo.
Hey, KD and Terry Lyons joining the call. Mystery phone number joining the call. It's great to have
Recording
you
in
here.
progress.
Okay.
Oh, KD. Hey.
Thank you for
KD, the
uplifting my
OG.
thing. Yeah.
How many people did you get to answer your poll, Kim?
Over 50 now.
Fantastic.
All right.
So thank you.
Absolutely. Kim was working on an article that had as a component of the research a poll, a public-facing anonymous poll that took about 11 seconds. But you know how hard it is to get people to do anything. So there were a couple of us singing about it on various and sundry platforms. I'm glad that you got the responses.
I like that. I have to check it out.
Wait, now I am going to really be quiet.
Okay.
All right, let's get
Joyce,
started.
do you want me to share the land acknowledgement? You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Great.
In case people want to read along, that'll be fine.
Give me a minute.
Okie dokie, because I have it also. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Continuing Conversations. Our discussion tonight will be about the water stealing. Oh, sorry. But before we begin, let me ground myself in thinking about the land on which we are living. The land on which we are living is part of the ancient homeland and traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape people. We pay respect to the Lenni Lenape people past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in their homeland and in the diaspora. We also acknowledge the millions of enslaved Africans and their descendants on whose backs the wealth of this nation was created. Not in Our Town mission statement. Not in Our Town Princeton is a multiracial, multi-faith group of individuals who stand together for racial justice and inclusive communities. Our focus is to promote the equitable treatment of all and to uncover and confront white supremacy, the systems that facilitate the preference, privilege, and power of white people at the expense of non-white people and pits racial and ethnic groups against each other by upholding hierarchies based on proximity to whiteness. Our goal is to identify and expose the political, economical, and cultural systems which have enabled white supremacy to flourish and to create new structures and policies which will ensure equity and inclusion for all. In our commitment to uncovering the blight of white supremacy on our humanity, we take responsibility by addressing it and eliminating it in all its forms through intentional actions, starting with ourselves and our communities. I am ecstatic, beyond honored to introduce our very own Carolyn Clarke. I hope you guys had an opportunity to read her bio, but this is going to be on a personal level. Our Carolyn has always been the voice for the voiceless. She has always spoken up for the masses, and I cannot begin to tell you how much I admire and respect her for that. Many people don't understand the plight of the masses, and I do not like the word of underclass, but many people still don't understand the plight of everyday community folks, but Carolyn does. And tonight we're going to talk about that, and I hope you have your good listening ears on. Carolyn, thank you so much, and the rest of myself and the board, we appreciate your presence here. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. You're about to make me cry.
Okay, no tears.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I want to talk about Trenton Waterworks. Trenton, two things before I get started. The first is Trenton Waterworks needs change. It has management issues. It has transparency issues. It has communication issues. And it has infrastructure issues. But Trenton Waterworks is not unique. It is like most water utilities in the nation. The American Society of Civil Engineers, and slide 2, Linda, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave America's water infrastructure a national grade of C- and said the nation's water infrastructure is aging and underfunded. It states that more than 9 million existing lead lines pose health concerns, and in 2023, the EPA determined that the water infrastructure needs stand at $625 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars, over the next 20 years. So yes, we have some of those problems at Trenton Waterworks. But nothing about any of those problems justifies selling Trenton Waterworks. So the second thing I want to say is, throughout this discussion, I will use the words regionalization and sale interchangeably. And that's because what's happening here is not regionalization in the true sense of the word. It's not regionalization as the term has been used in government spaces. In government spaces, typically, regionalization refers to the consolidation of services, like school districts, police departments, right? Each entity has their own school or police department, and they consolidate them with other municipalities, typically to save taxpayers money. But in the Trenton Waterworks context, the other townships have no utility to bring to the table. They're purportedly bringing their checkbooks. Well, if you're bringing money to the table, you're buying. So that's not regionalization, it's a sale. Just because the buyers are from the region doesn't make it regionalization. So irrespective of whether it's another township or a private water company, someone is paying money in exchange for ownership of Trenton Waterworks. The state continues to call it regionalization. I would just like to start out by saying that is a misnomer. So I want to say that everything I say here tonight is based on my own research. I am not speaking as the chair of Not in Our Town. I am speaking as a resident taxpayer and owner of Trenton Waterworks. Trenton Waterworks belongs to the residents and taxpayers of the city of Trenton. Based on my own research, the state is pushing a narrative that Trenton's water is unsafe and that this sale is necessary because of that. The real objective here, though, in my opinion, is privatization. Safety is a scare tactic intended to facilitate the privatization of the utility. It would not be the first time that an executive used a scare tactic and rhetoric to justify governmental intrusion into the affairs of an inner city. So the unfair water narrative has been pushed by the state through DEP. The fact is, Trenton's water meets the federal EPA standards for safe drinking water. I attended a forum in May of 2025 at one of the Trenton schools, and DEP staff was in attendance. And there, they admitted that Trenton's water is safe. and said they drink it every day. Ewing's own mayor said it hasn't killed a plant. And Trenton recently sent out a water quality report, which DEP has not challenged any of the findings in that report. If they knew the report to be false, they would certainly have capitalized on it. During our meeting with the DEP commissioner and our city council, City Council President Yasminelli asked Commissioner LaTourette several times, is the water safe? At first, he refused to answer, and then he relented and he said, yes, for now. So this does not mean that we don't have problems, like I started out saying, but it does mean that as far as the DEP is concerned, their regulatory authority, it's about providing safe drinking water, and Trenton does provide safe drinking water. During an interview, as well as when Commissioner LaTourette showed up at City Council, he pushed back on anti-regionalization initiatives, and he indicated that people died from Legionnaires because of Trenton's bad water. That is disingenuous and dangerous. Yes, there was a Legionella breakout in Hamilton. However, Legionella breakout in New Jersey is not limited to areas served by Trenton Waterworks. I checked the New Jersey Department of Health's website and I found a map illustrating Legionella. Would you show that slide, please, Linda? That would be slide 3. It's illustrating Legionella breakout in New Jersey. I think this is up till 2023. The 5 most severe instances of Legionella happened in Mercer, Essex, Warren, Hunterdon, and Union. Mercer is Trenton Waterworks, check. But Essex, Warren, Hunterdon, and Union counties, they are either fully or partially serviced by American Water or Aqua Water. Therefore, Legionella also happens when the utility is privately owned. At no time did DEP's commissioner call out those private utilities or called for the sale of those privately held companies. To use the event of Legionellas as a reason to sell Trenton Waterworks is to tie the unfortunate incident to the type of ownership of the water, and that's cheap. And it's a weak scare tactic. Legionella is a common problem that occurs in water systems throughout the world, irrespective of whether it's private or publicly owned. It's exploitive and it's desperate to use that as a reason to justify the sale. The commissioner also brought up Flint, Michigan, when he visited our council. So since he opened the door, I'm going to walk through it. He issued a dire warning that Trenton may become the next Flint. And he is correct, but not for the reason he's saying. What happened in Flint is that the state government switched its water supply from the Detroit water facility and started taking water from the Flint River. This is important because of its similarity to what's going on in Trenton. The person who made that decision was not the elected city council in Flint. It was a state-appointed, unelected emergency manager for the city of Flint who made the decision. The Michigan Civil Rights Commission did an investigative report and along with other analyses, identified several reasons for what happened in Flint. One of the reasons was systemic racism and institutional failures. Chief amongst them was the devaluation of the majority Black city following deindustrialization and white flight from Flint. State government policies that treated the city and its predominantly Black population as less important. And this neglect included cuts in state revenue sharing, which hurt Flint's finances and infrastructure, similar to what has happened and is happening in Trenton. Our funding has been cut, and it has been tied to our submission to the state and the fact that we don't get our payment in lieu of taxes. Another finding was that the undemocratic and racially disparate governance, the state's appointment of unelected emergency managers to the financially distressed majority Black cities like Flint, led to an erosion of local democracy. In the same way that the DEP is attempting to substitute its decisions for our council's decisions. In Flint, about 43% of the population lived in poverty. In Trenton, it's about 30. In Flint, 45% of homes were renter occupied. In Trenton, 64% of the homes are renter occupied. In addition, just as in many low-income and minority urban centers, children in Flint were already at increased risk for lead exposure because of older and deteriorated housing stock and poor nutrition, just like they are in Trenton. In Flint, the lead infection rate was about 5%. In Trenton, we have a 6% infection rate. So Commissioner LaTourette is correct. There are scary similarities of what happened in Flint and what is happening in Trenton in real time. If the state takes our water, we will most definitely end up like Flint. But not because we refuse to sell the water, but because of what the state government has historically done and is doing. By pressuring our elected officials to disregard the voices of those who elected them and instead do what the state tells them to do, that is an erosion of democracy. That is voter disenfranchisement. And that is how Trenton will end up like Flint. So I want to move on to the timing of things. So I asked the question, why is the current administration so interested in safety only at the end of its tenure? Why are they only interested regarding safety when it involves our revenue producing asset, and only when it involves richer and wider towns? They certainly were not interested in safety when the United States Department of Justice issued a scathing report on the Trenton Police Department, the law and safety arm of our government. The administration wasn't interested in the lack of safety there. They didn't even bother to suggest regionalization. So is this progressive administration saying that they're interested in water safety, but not public safety? Are they saying they're interested in safety in wider and richer towns, but not in predominantly Black towns like Trenton? I'm just asking a question. I want to move on to privatization. So I don't believe DEP's narrative that the push for sale is about safety. I believe it's about privatization. It's about revenues. Trenton Trenton Waterworks generates over $60 million annually. It's an asset. You don't have to be a Wall Street guru to know that. But in 2009, the state tried to privatize Trenton Waterworks. That was the first big push for privatization. The BPU argued that the state of New Jersey, and that's slide number 5, Linda, that the state of New Jersey would receive additional gross receipts and franchise taxes from New Jersey American Water that it would not otherwise receive if the acquisition were not to be completed. So the state has a financial stake in the sale of Trenton Waterworks. So they're pushing regionalization because they know that the county and the municipalities would be willing to sell the waterworks to a private entity. In fact, one of the reliefs that the municipalities asked for when they joined DEP's effort to sue Trenton Waterworks, one of the reliefs they asked for was the forced sale to a private utility. So this is not my speculation. This is established. So let's go back to 2009 a little bit. In that attempt, the state straight up tried to privatize Trenton Waterworks. They tried to privatize Trenton Waterworks at the end of Corzine's gubernatorial term. That was just a straight money grab. There was no scare tactics. It's just, we're selling. So the citizens objected. They said, too bad, we're selling. The citizens took them to court. Every single court ruled against the citizens and said they were allowed to sell until we went to the Supreme Court, which finally said you cannot disenfranchise the voters. They have a constitutional right to vote on the disposition of the asset. The referendum went through. Trenton, the no sale initiative, won 79-21. Trentonians did not want to sell their water utility in 2009. And I believe that is still the same in 2025. I want us to understand that in 2009, our governor was Corzine. He was a Wall Streeter. In 2025, our governor is Murphy. He's a Wall Streeter. He's also trying to sell the water at the end of his term. The reason they do this is because they want to avoid political fallout. So they do it at the end of their terms. So here is our Wall Street governor pushing hard at the end of his tenure for the sale. This time, the sale is couched in safety concerns. And DEP and DCA are the agencies he's using to effectuate the sale. Having had the benefit and having learned the lessons from Corzine's attempt, he's doing it in a way that could bypass a referendum. But to be clear, this is not the administration's first attempt to transfer ownership of Trenton Waterworks. This administration's first attempt happened in 2018, 6 months after Trenton Waterworks was placed under consent order under the state. The legislature put up a bill to transfer ownership from Trenton to Mercer County. Those bills died. They put it up in 2018, 2020, and 2022. That's slide number 6, Linda. That's the bill. So their first quote unquote regionalization attempt died. So now the last attempt is selling to the municipalities. what's important to remember about the three bills, though, is that when these bills came up to transfer ownership of Trenton Waterworks, at that point in time, Commissioner LaTourette had no pictures about decaying infrastructure. They had no state paid for independent reports about catastrophic conditions at Trenton Waterworks. We didn't have an employee who had yet not taken samples at Trenton Waterworks, who failed to do his job. None of that was in play. It was a straight up, we want to move it because we've had problems with Trenton and water safety. No evidence. This is just the given reason about why. Now, I am not a water expert by any stretch of the imagination. I am simply interested in asking questions that I think will at least force folks to answer in a way, and then we can make decisions for ourselves about why these things are happening and the way that they're happening. So we're at the regionalization with the municipalities. So the latest push, of course, is for the municipalities to come to the table and buy Trenton Waterworks. So why are we not calling this a sale? Why does DEP insist on calling it regionalization? Because we have a 2010 referendum that says we're not interested in selling. So now we're using euphemisms and calling it regionalization. So in my opinion, because these justifications did not exist at the time that the three bills were put up, it's reasonable to conclude that the state had a predetermined outcome since 2018, and that it's used its time while we were under the state's consent order to gather evidence to justify the forced sale or transfer to a public entity, a necessary step in the privatization process. You see, if the utility is sold to a private company like American Water, it requires a referendum. If it is sold to another public entity, it is not a mandatory referendum. If the voters in Trenton decide that they are going to contest the sale, we are required to get 15% of the signatures from the voters in the most recent election cycle, and we have 20 days in which to do it. So if we are unsuccessful in gathering those signatures, the sale goes through. No referendum needed. So the sale to the municipality is really a circuitous way to get to the sale to the private entities. Again, since the municipalities have already indicated they are willing to sell to the private entities. So the takeaway is that the first attempt to transfer happened at the beginning of the administration through the legislature, and the final attempt is happening at the end of the administration through sale to the municipalities. This is not about safety. It is a circuitous route to privatization. If it was about safety, they would have forced a fix 8 years ago with the same vigor that they are now using to force a sale. The proposed solution, the only solution that the state has for us, is a sale. Well, a sale doesn't fix the problems. It doesn't fix systemic failures. It doesn't fix infrastructure decay. It doesn't fix financial issues or data fraud. It privatizes those things. And what that means is it moves the problems from the public sphere, where transparency is demanded, and moves it to a space where there is no transparency and no accountability, to private corporations. So the state's position is full of contradictions. According to Commissioner LaTourette, Trenton Waterworks needs to be untied from Trenton's government. Why? Because no one wants to work with Trenton. But every month, Trenton gives out hundreds of contracts, and they're always bidders. So somebody wants to work with Trenton. The problem is not that no one wants to work with Trenton. The problem is that Trenton will not submit to the state. We will not be bullied into selling our utility, and we will not be tricked into selling our water utility. So Commissioner LaTourette also says that if the utilities moved under the 5 municipalities rather than just Trenton, that he would be able to bring in the expertise to fix the problems at Trenton Waterworks. Well, if you can bring in the expertise under 5 governments, you surely can bring it in under 1 government. Why aren't we doing that? We're not doing that because the objective is not to fix, the objective is to sell. So, and for the record, if Trenton Waterworks' water is unsafe, so too is American Water and Aqua Water, since they both rent pipes from Trenton Waterworks. I didn't even know that. It was Commissioner LaTourette's RFP that told us about that. So I want to move on a little to the economic impact. The economic impact of losing Trenton Waterworks will be devastating to Trenton. It will result in a loss of jobs and revenues, some of which offsets our budget. The state doesn't pay taxes, and if they did, it would be to the tune of $69 million annually. We don't get that. One of the townships, which has been quite vocal regarding pushing for the sale, they owe Trenton Waterworks $1.7 million in water bills. No one knows how much the state owes, but I do know that they too owe Trenton Waterworks. So Trenton will lose jobs and revenues, while the municipalities and the state will gain our jobs and gain our revenues and essentially be rewarded for not paying their water bill. Look at the average median income in the respective municipalities. Trenton's median income is $47,000 a year. Ewing, twice that, 87. Hamilton, 97. Lawrence, 122,000. Hopewell, $177,000 a year. And our progressive governor wants to transfer our revenue to these townships that are far richer than us. What will happen to Trenton? We will look like Flint. No one has bothered to do an impact analysis on how this will affect, an economic analysis on how this will impact Trenton. Trenton does use some of the money from Trenton Waterworks to fund our budget. And some of our customers expressed that they are upset about this. But this is industry practice and it's legal. But I wish the townships would also be upset about the fact that they and every other town in New Jersey is subsidized by Trentonians every day. Every day we have the burden of housing these state buildings, foregoing $69 million in tax revenues. Our roads withstand the state workers' traffic every day. Our garbage collectors, our water and sewer utility, our fire department. It's interesting to me that towns complain that we use money from the utility to supplement our budget, but they're quiet regarding the costs of being the capital city, quiet that we don't get our pilot, quiet when the state is forcing Trenton to hire its political cronies, some of them from their townships. And I don't want to hear that Trenton gets municipal aid. Other towns get municipal aid too, and they don't have to house state buildings. That is a different issue than payment in lieu of taxes. It's a different pot of money. New Jersey has one of the worst wealth gap in the nation. Privatization will widen that gap, as this transfer of wealth will have long-term and crippling effect on Trenton. We will still be subsidizing the state despite the fact that the state has forcibly taken our revenues. This is a transfer of wealth in real time. This is how you create Flints. You take the jobs, you take the hospitals, you take the libraries, and you take the revenue producing assets and you transfer them to richer and wider towns. But you make sure you keep the bad policing. This is a recipe for disaster. This is how government creates ghettos and then blame the people stuck in those conditions for the conditions they created. So I'm going to come up out of the weeds a little bit. I just want to talk about water privatization in general, and then I'm going to run the video. I hope I'm running a little over time. So privatization is a terrible way to address infrastructure and financial challenges. Water privatization is expensive. Water companies are allowed to pass the cost right on to customers through higher bills. They charge 59% more than public systems. And it's expensive primarily because of the 10% profit that corporations earn on their investments. They're also allowed to be bad actors, and no one stops them from engaging in the business. Manalapan's request for proposal resulted in only one bidder, and that was Viola, the same company implicated in the lead in water crisis in Flint. They pledged to freeze water rates. They never keep that promise. Privatization typically reduces jobs by about 1/3, with fewer employees to respond to customers. Private companies also cherry pick which areas they provide service in or where they invest in projects to avoid serving low-income communities because they won't make much money there. So when profit is the priority, low-income residents are adversely impacted, as they are likely to struggle to pay. Water affordability is a racial justice issue, and it is an equity issue. This administration cannot say that they support underserved communities while trying to dispossess an underserved community of its biggest revenue producing asset, our water. Yes, Trenton makes and the state takes. I just want you to listen for a quick minute to a video that is played, and just, bear with me. Please don't take everything that's said in there. I just need you to listen carefully to how the mayor of Hamilton, who owes the $1.7 million, how he's so vociferous about the sale, and his admission at the very end where he says he wants to own shares. Well, nobody owns shares in a public utility. You only own shares in a private one. So Linda, would you play the video for me? I think there's a little star over to the side. If you hit that, the video will play. Do you see it? Yeah, that one. If you look right under the 8, you'll see that little star. If you hit the star. Ooh. Now go back up. Yeah, that one. It didn't play. Hit the star underneath the, look at the number 8 on the slide. Over, yeah, hit that. It still didn't play. Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay because we're short on time anyway. But if anyone is interested, I'll be happy to send out the video afterwards. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you have any questions, we'll talk about them in our breakout rooms, and we could meet back and talk if we need to. But at the end of the day, Trentonians oppose selling our water to anyone, public or private. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Before we go into the breakout rooms, I do have a question.
Yes.
Will this issue die at the end of Murphy's administration, or is it going to continue in? And what do the have the two gubernatorial candidates said anything about the issue?
No, neither has said anything about the issue. Again, this is part of the neglect that we talk about when we talk about the governance. My suspicion is that this will not go away. It will come up again and again until they think they have worn Trentonians out. The reason they do this at the end of administration is because they don't want to adversely impact the incoming administration, right? So Murphy doesn't want to adversely impact Sherrill. To be honest, I haven't heard anything from Chitterelli regarding this at all. And in fact, she hasn't said anything either. But we do know that Commissioner Latourette was out and about campaigning for gubernatorial candidate Mickey Sherrill.
Hi, Caroline. I actually also have a question. I don't know
Yes.
if you're able to hear me.
I can.
Okay, excuse any background noise because I am on transit right now, our lovely transit systems. But first and foremost, I just want to say, I want to first and foremost express my heartfelt thanks for this informative presentation. And I'm truly sorry for the challenges you and your community are facing under Democratic leadership. I deeply appreciate that individuals like you take time away from your families to raise awareness and fight for what's right, which is exactly what you are doing. The research, time, and effort you put into this project and the fight is truly remarkable. And I want you to know that we're listening and fully support you in this fight to protect underserved communities. Also, I just wanted to reiterate and clarify, the mayor is Democrat as well as our governor. And you had also mentioned political fallout. While I understand what you meant by that, I also believe there are clearly, like you stated, there are profits to be made. And this is exactly the angle that they want to go. Excuse me. This is exactly the direction that they want to go in.
Great.
And I must ask, why is the state regionalizing instead of just straight privatizing like Corzine did?
So the state is privatizing like Corzine did. They're just using the word regionalization. They're using the word regionalization because if you say the word sale, Trentonians are up in arms, right? So we're using euphemisms. That's number one. Number two, again, this is just a circuitous way to get to privatization. If you sell directly to a private entity, you have to have a referendum. If you sell to another public entity, you may or may not have a referendum. You will only have a referendum if the residents secure 15% of the electorate in the last election, and they have 20 days in which to do it, to challenge the sale, to make it a referendum, right? So there is a pretty big burden on the city to meet the 20-day deadline and get the 15% of the electorate to sign the petition to raise the referendum. So they're hoping that we're not able to organize, that we're not able to secure the number of signatures needed within the time that's needed. So it's really it's really just a workaround to sale. Well, it's 20 days, it's 15%, and it starts after the ordinance is raised to sell the water. I'm sorry, after the ordinance is approved. Yes, we will tap our allies to help us to secure the signatures.
Jim has a question.
Okay.
James, can you?
Yeah, but very thorough presentation, Carolyn. Thank you. The question I had is, I did a little bit of research online about this, and it seemed to me, you kept talking about it, I understand, as a sale, but it's from what they're presenting, they say that there'll be a regional public utility authority in which all the 4 townships plus Trenton will all be represented. And so that doesn't sound like a sale to it's not a sale to New Jersey American or something. So help me understand what's going on here.
Okay, so a sale to American Water is a sale to a private utility. A sale to the townships is a sale to a public utility. It is still a sale, irrespective of who is the buyer.
Yeah, but it's not a sale to them. It's a partnership. Trenton will still, in fact, be the majority owner, so to speak. The townships have to pay for part of the assets, but you have more people in Trenton using the water than in the townships. So it seems like you are the majority owner in that. So I'm confused.
Okay, so let's come up a little bit from Trenton Waterworks. Is there any corporation that you know in which there are more owners, or their owners are proportionate to the users? Okay, does Tesla care how many customers it has? Right? The board makes its decisions in the best interest of Tesla. Trenton Waterworks makes its decisions in the best interest of Trenton and its customers. But customers pay for the water and we provide the water. After that, the customers don't really have a say about what we do. We have an obligation to provide safe drinking water, and we should, but the fact that there are more customers outside of Trenton than in Trenton is not a reason to make them owners. We provide a service, water. In fact, we were about to get more. I think Bordentown was thinking at some point of joining. So just because we get more customers doesn't mean that we don't deserve to own our water. Why would we own a utility, a $60 million utility, and then give richer townships partial ownership? You guys have a lot going on in your communities. You have a lot of money, a lot of assets. No one ever would think about coming into your community and compelling your council to sell your assets to Trenton.
This sounds like just the way that I was reading, that there would be 2 benefits to Trenton from partial ownership by the townships. One was there would be an initial influx of money, and then second, there would be a annual flow of money from the townships as part of the operation. I can send you the information that I discovered so that maybe that would be helpful.
Well, so let me say this. Whether Trenton keeps or sells its asset is a decision for Trentonians.
They're not that's the point that I read, which was they aren't really selling it. They're just selling part of it. So they still maintain control.
Right. So selling part of it is selling it, because when we sell part of it, we're giving up the revenues to that part of it. We have no desire to do that. Okay, it is our water. It is our utility. It is our revenues. We are an underserved community. We cannot afford to give up our one asset, our revenue producing asset. If you guys do want to share services with us though, I think it would be good for some of the townships to recommend perhaps regionalizing the police department.
Yeah, well, I don't live in any of those townships.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm from
Yeah.
outside the area. So
Okay, yeah. So I think it would be good if we want to talk about partnerships and, you know, sharing problems as well as solutions. Let's start with our police department and maybe our school districts, and then maybe then we can talk about regionalizing those things. And then if that works out really well, then maybe the trust will be there where we would be okay with sharing our revenue producing assets.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Mickey?
I'm ready. So, first of all, thank you, Caroline, for just such a wonderful presentation. It's such an informative presentation. In a few minutes, we'll be moving into breakout rooms. And I just want to go over a few community agreements. Let me open them up so I can see them. The first thing is listen to each other respectfully so that each person has an opportunity to be heard. Take space, make space. People are encouraged to overcome their reluctance to talk. Take care not to dominate the conversation. Allow everyone to have equal airtime. Be careful not to interrupt when someone else is speaking. Please agree to respect one another's privacy by keeping this discussion and people's names and identities confidential. We ask that you embrace the concept, whatever is said or shared room stays in this room. Please speak from your own personal experience to avoid making generalizations. White people may feel uncomfortable when a person of color shares a hard truth. They should also understand that sharing these truths can be painful or even traumatic for the person of color. And finally, while we commit to centering these conversations through the lens of race, participants may experience these conversations through a variety of lenses. We acknowledge intersectionality, the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender, regarded as creating overlapping interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. We make space for the breadth of human experience and all are welcome. Okay, and we're going to share the questions for everyone to take a look at. So I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to take a look at the questions. Okay, so now we're going to move into breakout rooms. And I just want to say that if, once the rooms are open, if people have left and they're not, we may move people around, so don't be concerned if you get moved. And once again, thank you so much to Caroline. And after this, we'll reconvene